Jesus has been turning their focus to his impending sufferings. And here in our text, beginning in verse 30, Jesus is now for the second time explicitly telling the disciples about his death, his burial, and his resurrection. He's going to be handed over. He's going to be betrayed, is probably the sense here. He's going to be delivered over to men, and they're going to kill him. But after he's killed, 3 days later, I'm going to rise again. And so Jesus here, he's not merely telling the disciples, in a sense, about his sufferings just to give them a heads up. Just so you know, when we get to Jerusalem, things aren't going to go the way you think. He's not merely giving them a heads up about his impending death. He is wanting to teach them about the cross. He wants them to understand how the cross becomes the centerpiece of the gospel, the good news of the kingdom. He wants them to understand the cross so that their lives might be transformed to be like his. That they would be conformed to the image of Christ in every way. And he needs them to understand the way of Christ is the way of the cross. It's going to be the way of the cross. And so you can see how Jesus' words, all the way back in chapter 8, verse 34, loom over this text. Let me remind you of those words. If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will find it. And we're finding in this very moment, this teaching moment, Jesus is unpacking that. He's calling them to deny themselves, take up their cross and follow him by killing their pride, by killing their jealousy, to think about their ministry in light of the cross. And so he is to us today. It's how you kill your pride, the jealousy that you have. You have to crucify it, deny yourself, and take up your cross. For many Christians, we're perplexed like the disciples here. You see in verse 32, they did not understand. They did not understand it, and they're too afraid to ask Jesus. Sometimes we get that. Sometimes maybe in Sunday school or in a discipleship class or something, a teacher will unpack some truth and say, any questions? And the reality is there are questions, but usually what? We're too afraid to ask. So are the disciples here. They don't want to ask. They don't, probably in their pride, don't want to look like they don't know. But whereas they don't. And many Christians don't understand the cross. They're perplexed by the cross. And they don't understand, okay, how is it supposed to shape my life? How's it supposed to shape the ministry of Tulip Grove Baptist Church? And so when we don't understand, we scratch our heads over texts like 2 Corinthians 12, where Paul says to us, boast all the more gladly in your weakness. I mean, Pastor Phil read from Galatians 6. We boast in the cross. Well, here we boast in our weaknesses. Why? Paul goes on, he says, so that the power of Christ might rest upon us. He says, for the sake of Christ, then, we are to be content, he says, with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecution, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am what? Strong. He understands the cross. Do you understand that the cross, Christ's greatest moment of weakness and suffering was his greatest victory? Amen? And so it is for us. So it will be for us. Because when we are weak, we're so dependent upon Christ. His power and his glory are manifested. But when we're puffed up, prideful, trying to be the greatest, whether that's individually or even our motivations as a church, jealous, oh, then we're weak. Weak, not in the way we want to be. We might look strong in the world's eyes. We might look strong in our own eyes, but we won't be strong in God's eyes. And so we need to understand how the cross shapes us. And so this morning, I want to encourage us to examine our life. I want us to examine our ministry in light of this text, in light of the cross, so that none of us might be driven by selfish ambition as we do ministry, as we serve in the life of the church, but our life and our ministry would be conformed to the way of the cross.